and a pleasant to be here today. Again, my name is DeUndra Christopher, motivational speaker and life coach. My platform, well, two topics on my platform is the power of forgiveness and the power of faith. And the power of forgiveness, I want to start off this morning by saying I've been talkative ever since I could remember, and my parents say I was talking before I was walking. So I guess I'm operating on my purpose. But I would like to start off by saying having something taken from you that you love so much. And I said how I love talking. Well, a couple years ago, I was stabbed in the back with a hunting knife, and my right lung was punctured and collapsed, and I was left for dead. So with that being said, the power of being able to speak was taken away from me for almost a year. I couldn't utter a word. Not only that, they thought I was paralyzed and I wasn't able to use my right hand, and I'm right-handed. And with that process, of course, my mother received a phone call that her daughter was dead as she sent me to the store. And for the first time in a long time, I was doing exactly what my mother told me to do. And that was to go to the store and bring her car right back. And she received that phone call, and my cousin told her that I had passed away. But fortunately, by the grace of God, that wasn't true. And I like to count that to the power of having faith and believing. I got stabbed on a Sunday. The Saturday before I got stabbed, for some reason I had this dark cloud over me. And I could not articulate or speak what the feeling was. But I knew I had to get to church that Sunday morning. And I told my friends, they was like, "You're acting weird today." And I was like, "I just need to go to church in the morning. If you paid me $1 million today, I could not take you back to the church that I was taking to that Sunday morning." When I got there, I went up for prayer. I asked the pastor to pray with me, and I received salvation again. So that Sunday, I went back, and I apologized to my mother, my brother, like people I had been mean to. So it was almost as if I had an intuition that there was a plan to take me out. But God had a better plan. So then is when my mother asked me to go to the store after I apologized for being disobedient at some times. And I got out of the car and I ran into a young lady that I had an altercation with weeks before. And that altercation led into a fight. And that young lady was supposedly a friend of mine, or someone that I had previous broke bread with, I would like to say. And she was the one that gave me the stab wound to the back and punch on my right lung. I was angry about that for years. Now, as I laid on that floor that night, I tried to make a bargain with God as they closed down my eyelids and said that I was dead. I could not move. I couldn't speak. And I remember them closing down my eyelids, and I remember internally I was saying, "Lord, if you just let me make it through this, I'll try my best to do right." And I remember it was like I had an out-of-body experience. And it was like my whole life, everything I had done all through my childhood and my youth and teen was like a movie going through a bright light. And I remember hearing my mother as she arrived to the gas station that I was at, screaming, "Who killed my child?" The young lady who did it, she ran. And so did her friend who given her the hunting knife. They all ran. So I remember saying, "Lord God, will you please let my mom know that I'm not dead?" And at that point, I kept saying, and I could feel life leaving me, but I said I should live and not die. And I just kept repeating that in my head, I should live and not die. And every time they said I was gone, I could just repeat that over and over until eventually I woke up in the middle of surgery, was coming through. And I remember I could hear the doctor saying, "She coming through," and they was operating me on the operating table, inserting a chest tube. I remember as that ended, and I was woke up like 5 a.m. that morning, and that happened at night. And when I came through, and they was rolling me down this long white hallway, and I was thankful for the opportunity to still be on this side of grace and earth and mercy, but I was so angry. And for years, I carried that anger with me because of what that young lady did to me. And I went on with life, and I was able to finish school and go on and enter into the military. At this time, I got married and birthed my daughter, and I remember carrying a burden of unforgiveness. I was so mean. I mean, mean, feisty mean. I didn't trust anyone because I knew her. She was somebody who I had broken bread with. So therefore, I didn't trust anyone, including the man that I had married. to get close to me. And I didn't like that feeling. And I remember praying and asking God to help me at this time, because now I'm a young lady married with a child. And I've been across the country, I carry this burden, and I'm living this life with this girl, a part of my everyday life. And I started praying to God to ask him to help me to forgive her and to let that go. And as I started praying about that, God started revealing some things to me about me. And I had to go and ask for some forgiveness from some people. So it wasn't just me forgiving her. My life became a process or a transformation of forgiveness. I had to go back. I had to forgive some people, like my father. I realized in that process I was angry because I was a fatherless daughter. My dad was there. He was married to my mother, but he wasn't there. He had other priorities over taking care of his responsibility as a father or a husband to his family. I was mad about that. I was mad at my mother because she stayed in a dysfunctional relationship for so long, and I realized that I had some resentment and anger there, and I had to go and forgive that. And through this process of forgiveness, I will never forget the day my husband left for work. And I just remember, I need a breakthrough. I am sick and tired of me. I don't like who I am when I look into the mirror. I don't like the way I feel. I don't like being mean to people. I don't like me right now. And I stood in that kitchen, and I was sitting there, and I hit the floor, and I cried out to God. And I mean, I literally cried out to God to change me, to make me a better person, that I can walk in love, that I can be free, that I can be at peace. What is this weight? You can't see it, but I can feel it. It was like an elephant was on my back, and I need this weight off of me. I'm only 112 pounds, and I feel like I'm 300 pounds walking around with this unforgiveness in me. And when I hit that floor and I cried out, and I literally cried out, and I felt a wind go in my kitchen. And I don't know where the wind came from, but I had vertical blinds, and I felt the wind. I could hear the blinds going, and it went around into my dining room. And when I stood up off that floor and I cried out to God, hallelujah, I can tell you, I felt like I had dropped 300 pounds of weight. I was free. I was healed. I was delivered. I was just elated. And I'm going to tell you how I knew I was, because the person who had almost taken my life, the first thing I wanted to do was contact her. Before that day, you couldn't mention her name. I would want to kill you. When I got up off that floor, I wanted to contact Chavette, and I know she don't mind me saying her name because she and I joined forces years later, but I wanted to contact her. Not only to contact her to say that I've forgiven you, but I love you. And I was so eager to let her know that I love her, and I called to Montgomery, Alabama, and I called my cousin. I said, do you know how I could get in contact with Chavette? And she said, I think she's still locked up. So we found out that I wasn't able to get in contact with her, and she was still doing time for stabbing me. So I prayed about that. And it took God 3 years to answer that prayer. And I got a phone call. My cousin was murdered in Montgomery, and my brother witnessed it. So my mother called me and told me about it, and I was like, this is a curse. Because by the time I was 12, I had witnessed 2 murders. And this was my brother's second murder that he had witnessed. So I was like, okay, I have to do something. Little did I know, God already had a plan. It took him 3 years to manifest it. So I drove to Montgomery, and I was speaking to my family, saying how violence wasn't an answer. And I told my mother, I said, I want to speak at the homegoing celebration tomorrow. Never spoken before. So they was like, okay, you can do that. But when I got there with so many people, I was afraid. So I was like, no, I'm not going to do this. So little did I know, I kept shaking. And the power, it's just a force, pushed me up out my seat. And I was sitting on the right side of the church in the 3rd row. I got up and I started walking. And my cousin who was standing there moved out of the way. And I got up, I said, I know this is not a part of the program, but I have to do this. And so I got up and I started speaking. And I said, the person who did what they did to me 10 years ago is in the house today. I have forgiven you and I love you. Not knowing that she was the 3rd person on the left side of the church, on the same row, but just the opposite. And she jumped up and she said, it's me. I'm here. I'm sorry. And I truly didn't mean to kill you that night. She said, I'm so sorry for what I did to you. And when that happened, Shekinah glory took over the church. And at that point, I saw no one but her. And it was like a one-on-one between the 2 of us. And I told her at that time, I'm sorry too. Please forgive me for my partake in that fight. And we hugged and we embraced. And I asked my mother, will you come up and accept her as your daughter and do unto her as you did unto my sister and I, and love her? And that girl, she fell out and she cried and she said, I'm so sorry. My point is, when God come in, well, first you got to be sick and tired, because I had to get to that point. But when he came in and did the healing process, I knew that it was a divine assignment at that point, that what I thought my life was to be was no longer, that it was another purpose and plan. I stepped out on faith, and that is where faith come in at. I stepped out on faith, and I walked away from my security blanket, government contract job, because I exited the military. And for 18 months, she and I joined hands. We joined forces hand in hand. And we went around to schools and community and wherever we could go to share our story, to tell people violence is not the answer for one. You can speak before you hit or pick up a brick or a knife or a gun to do anything to harm or take somebody else's life. Number two, forgiveness is a must. Forgiveness is a must for you, as in me or yourself. The power of forgiveness sets you free. It wasn't so much as about her as I thought it was. It was more so about me, that I could be delivered and healed and walk in peace and walk in love. It was more so about me being whole. There is power in forgiveness. Set yourself free. Don't hold a grudge with anyone, because it's not worth it. It will cost you your peace and your sleep at night. It will turn you into someone that you don't want to be. So it is a must. The power of forgiveness. It's a must. I'm a living testimony. You have to let it go. I don't care how big, how small, how ugly, how whatever. Let it go. It is not worth it at the end of the day. It is freedom. It is peace. You must forgive. Let it go.